Well, hello there. I am so excited that you're joining me today. This is a very interesting topic, and we're going to do a lot more talking about tenant screening. So I hope you enjoy yourself and learn something. Hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen. I am so pleased that you are joining me today. I've seen so many discussions about tenant screening in general. So I'm going to do a lot more shows on this, but specifically, how do you rent to a first-time tenant or maybe somebody that is new to the country, they don't have any credit? How do you do renting or at least tenant screening with a co-signer, also known as a guarantor? How do you actually do that? So today I'm going to help guide you through this. So today's show is going to look something like this. I'm going to talk about pre-qualification and tenant screening. And this is for any tenant. This doesn't, not just first-time tenants or people with co-signers, but just any tenant. We'll talk about the showing, and then we'll talk about the final qualification for these potential tenants, and then what this looks like on the lease and the lease addendum. Okay, so let's jump into this. Tenant qualification. So the first thing that I require of all of my tenants is an application. And you might say, wait a minute, Jen, shouldn't the potential tenant see the unit first? The answer is, for me, is no. And I don't require a full application though. This is something called a pre-qualification. I don't require pay stubs and IDs and all of that, but I do need to make sure that the basic information for these potential tenants matches our rental criteria and matches what the unit can handle. Now, for an application, I have a website with my application on both sides of the border, both in the US and Canada. I have websites, but there are programs, software, generic tenancy applications. You can Google tenancy applications. You can use those. But for a potential tenant, any potential tenant, I require some kind of an application first. This starts the process for me, for my business. And so what I'm looking for when I check the potential tenant's information, I'm making sure there's no what I call deal breakers. And the deal breakers are something simple that, you know, I think they're simple, but they're a smoker in a non-smoking unit. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, Jen, they can smoke outside. I have found the worst damage done in our rental units is somebody smokes in it. And even if they don't smoke in the unit, if they're smoking a foot outside the unit, the smoke comes in and it gets on the walls and it's thousands of dollars to recover it. So I typically do not allow smokers. I have allowed smokers. We do have smokers as tenants, but a deal breaker for me at this point, if you are a non-smoking, if you're a smoking tenant looking for a unit in a non-smoking unit, that's a deal breaker for me. That's for my business. What about if they have 8 beings and the unit that they're applying for is a 1-bedroom? That's a deal breaker. Too many people, too many heartbeats. What about if they have 4 vehicles and the unit only comes with 1 parking stall? Now that may not be a full deal breaker, but that might be a red flag. So even if that happened, I might proceed, but they got to have a game plan on what they're going to do with these other 3 vehicles, because if there's no street parking or there's nothing nearby, the logistics have to work. What if they operate a home-based, let's say mechanic business, and that's not permitted where the unit is? That might be a problem. But again, that might not be a deal breaker. It might be a red flag. What if they have cats and it's a no cat unit or a no pet unit? Or if they have a puppy, they just got a puppy. We don't take pets less than a year old. So those are deal breakers for me. Those are just some examples of what we're looking for. Also in the pre-qual, I make sure that the tenant fits the general requirements for the unit. Again, I don't require an ID, pay stub, credit check, or anything else for now, just the information that will allow us to sort of do a first look at who they are, what their history is a bit, and just figure out, is this someone we want to work with? Now, if we have 2 people applying for the unit, they must both submit an application or a pre-application, however you want to say it. They must both submit one. I can't just do one and then they'll say, how many people in the unit? 2. Okay, well, I need the other person to submit it as well. Now, the way we have it set up at this point, the application, once it's sent in the website, it gets emailed to the team. I get it, Mike gets it, the local manager gets it. The local manager is my administrative person where my rentals are located, because I do self-manage my units. I don't have a property manager. And at the moment, this administrative person is our daughter. This is in Canada, but it hasn't always been her. We've had other people as well, and we're all looking for the same things, potential deal breakers. We're also looking at Facebook, social media sites, looking at them going, is this someone that's talking about all kinds of illicit drug use, lots of partying, lots of drinking, lots of, mischief, that kind of thing. Well, if that's what they're into, then that's probably not going to change if they were to move into your unit. My thought on all of this is the sooner that you can find the deal breakers, the sooner that you can qualify or disqualify someone for the unit. Also, there is very likely, wherever your rentals are in the US or in Canada, there is some way to check either criminal history or court history. So in British Columbia, for example, it's free to check criminal and civil history. So I'll do a quick check just based on the pre-application to see if they have any criminal convictions or civil rulings. And if they have a civil ruling that's an eviction, it's a writ of possession, that's an eviction. Well, that tells me even if they don't declare it on their application, that they've had an eviction. So it's right there. If we have a first-time renter applying, because that's what today's show is about, is a first-time renter, then where we ask for the previous addresses, what they will do is they will have their home address, meaning where they grew up, typically with their parents, and they'll put their parents as the landlords. And when it says, how long have you lived there? They'll say 18 years, for example. Well, bingo, that tells me they're a first-time tenant. That means they haven't rented before. So at this point, I'll reach out to the potential tenant if there's no other deal breakers and explain that due to the lack of rental history, we'll need a local, responsible adult to apply and go on the lease with them. Local, responsible adult. Now, this could be a parent, a guardian, a friend, a neighbor, a scout leader, whomever, but we have to have someone else on the lease to qualify with them. Now, if nothing else happens, then you move on. I mean, at this point, I'm moving on with other tenants, any other potential tenants, any other applications. I've told the potential tenant what I need to move forward. It's up to them then to find a responsible adult that's in the area that is willing to be their co-signer, willing to go on the lease with them. Nothing else happens with me. I'm not chasing them. That's not happening. So if they are interested, then they will have, the next thing that I will find is I'll get an application from this responsible local adult, and I'll get an email that will say I'm co-signing for whomever. Then it's back on, it's back in, if the unit is still available. So if there is, let's see, if there's an additional adult applicant, somewhere they'll note, yes, somewhere they're saying, hey, I'm going to co-sign for this person, this youngster, this first-time renter. And again, same as any other application, I look for the deal breakers. Has this person had evictions before? Do they have a criminal history, civil history? If you, in some locations, you have to pay for these searches, and they're usually not very much money. They're sometimes $5, $6, sometimes $10. If you have to pay for these searches, excuse me, if you have to pay for these searches in your state, province, or territory, or your county, some places do it by county, this is where you have to ask yourself, is paying the fee to do a quick search of these folks worth your time and energy? This is what I call the grief to dollars ratio. The grief to dollars ratio is the grief better make sense of whatever dollars you're getting out. The pain has to balance the reward. So if the cost is a $5 per check or $10 in, then, and you find that neither of them have a similar, if you find that neither of these applicants, the first-time renter and their co-signer, if you find that neither of them have a criminal or civil past, or if you do find something, if you find that one of them is a recent convicted violent felon or has had evictions in their past, maybe this is worth it. So you've got to spend a little money. And do I pay money and then not end up renting to people? It happens all the time. Cost of doing business. This is where you have to figure out how to check your court records in the local area where the rentals are. This is area specific. I can't figure this one out for you. You've got to figure it out. Now, there is also to my US listeners, if you are in the US, there is a national search engine. There's actually a couple of them that you can find that are specific to your local state. So if you want to do that, you can. There's a couple in Canada. If you're a Canadian listener, there's a couple in Canada where you can just say, court records in Manitoba, and they will come up. It's a national register, but it's specifically for Manitoba. This is also helpful if you are not in the local area. If your rentals are far away from you in a different jurisdiction, you still got to figure out how you're going to qualify these tenants from afar. It's very interesting how this works. So you've got to make sure that you understand how to do this. If you need some help, you're welcome to do a holler. Holler is something new that I'll explain at the end of the episode, that I will answer on air any question that you have. So if you're interested in that, you can do a holler from the website. Anyway, let's keep going. At this point, you'll have the potential tenant with a potential local responsible co-signer. Let's say, hypothetically, we find no deal breakers and we schedule the showing. So make sure that the unit will work for whatever they need or they want. Maybe the unit is too close to the road, or they want a yard for their dog, or they want to be in a different location in town, or perhaps they don't drive, or the walk is too far to the nearest bus stop. Could be anything, could be nothing. The unit's got to work for them. And but we've got to check that what they see on the website in the photos actually matches what they want in person. So I also require the potential tenant's co-signer. Both of them have to be at the showing. If they can't both make it, then we're not moving on. I have to be able to coordinate with the co-signer. They are signing up to be financially responsible for this potential tenant. So they need to understand what they're doing, what they're into. Okay. So if you listen to other podcasts, you know that I've done all kinds of content on tenant qualification. And one of my sayings is, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if they show up in a beat up car full of takeout boxes and garbage, guess what? That's exactly how the unit will become. So be careful. Make sure you're observant. Are they wearing raggedy, paint strewn clothes? Are they well dressed? Are they on time? Are they early? You've got to make sure all of these things count, because how they do anything is how they will do everything. Okay, so let's say that both the co-signer and the first-time tenant show up to the showing and they both agree that the unit will work for them and they want to move forward. Okay, so now it's getting serious. Now you've got to start diving in for real. This is where we actually have to require everything else that they didn't provide in the initial application. And that includes government picture ID, pay stubs, even for the co-signer. Remember, this person is potentially going to be financially responsible in the event the first-time tenant defaults and doesn't pay the rent. I can come after the co-signer. That's the whole idea. So government picture ID, pay stubs, credit report and score. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Letters of reference, references of some kind, even for the younger applicant. I've got to have some kind of character reference, even from a neighbor or a teacher, or maybe a Sunday school teacher, something. Somebody has known this person in some way and can vouch for them. Even a phone number. I don't have to have a letter per se, but if they do have a letter, I'm usually impressed. This is also where I ask about information for pets, service dogs, emotional support animals. This is where all of this gets verified to be correct. This is the spot where we start doing due diligence about that. I have many episodes on this, so this is confusing. That's okay. Also, I've got lots of different animal episodes, animals part 1, 2, and 3. So if you're confused about that, or if you really have a question, jump into one of the Facebook landlord groups and see the many, many conversations going on daily about animals of any kind. Nothing moves forward on this application until you have the rest of what you need to qualify them. If you send them an email, which is what I normally do, is I'll email them back and say, okay, I need ID, I need a pay stub, I need a this, I need a credit check, I need all these different things. And then if the unit is still available when you get that, then we can move forward. So I'm not waiting for them. Unfortunately, I know many of you out there are hanging on their hopes, going, I really hope it's them, I really hope it's them. You can't do that. It's a business. You've got to move forward if you can, okay? So nothing moves forward until you get all the stuff that you need, everything to qualify them. And let's just say that these people, this younger first-time tenant and an older responsible local co-signer send everything in quickly. This is normal because they know time is of the essence and that the unit is going to get rented. So let's say they send in everything quickly and I have everything. The last thing I do is the credit check. Now, this is different in the US than in Canada. This is different. So I'm going to talk about both. But let me do the US first. Okay. In the US, the potential tenant may be monitoring their credit. They may be paying for a credit monitoring service like TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. Those you can pay for like a monthly service. I think it's like $20 or $15 a month, where every month they will monitor it and they will send you emails and say, hey, your credit hasn't changed, or it's gone up, or it's gone down, whatever. They potentially could provide their own credit report and score, but I require it to be within the last 30 days. It's got to be current. You can't send me a credit report from 2 years ago. That doesn't help me. So if, let's say that maybe the adult is monitoring their credit, but then the younger tenant isn't, I need a credit report and score, a credit report and score. I need both for both parties. So if they don't have that, the potential tenant can pay for a credit check, which I get emailed the score and the report, but it also goes to them, right? I need them to basically buy it, but I get it too. And here's the thing, if somebody is looking for a unit, chances are they may have already done this for another landlord or another unit that they're looking into. That's fine. I don't need them to buy a new credit report every time they're applying for units, because in this tight housing market, there is usually a shortage of units, right? There is a shortage of units. And so people who need housing, they're going to apply to anything and everything they possibly can. I understand that. So as long as you have a credit report and score, I'm fine with that. If they don't, then there's a couple of credit checking agencies. I'm not going to go into which ones they are, but in the US, you can find them very easily if you Google credit checking agency, even for a landlord credit check. There's many, many software programs out there. And what you need is each potential tenant needs their own email. Okay, hang on. Each potential tenant needs their own email. You go into these software programs and you put in their name and their email, and they get sent a link on where they go, how they enter all their info, and they pay for the credit check themselves. In the US, the potential tenant pays for the credit check. But in Canada, the landlord pays for the credit check. I have credit checking software in Canada that I can go in and with their date of birth, their name, previous addresses, basically everything that is on their initial application and now confirmed with their ID, I can get a credit report and score for the Canadian potential tenant. I would pay for that as the Canadian landlord. And if there's an issue or they want a copy of the credit report, then they can have that as well. So now, one thing in Canada, you must get permission from the potential tenant that you could potentially check their credit. I almost always check credit. That's just how our business works. Okay, where are we? Okay, so one way or another, you get the credit report and score from the potential tenant, whether you buy it, whether they buy it, either way. What happens if they have no credit? None. Remember, this episode is all about a first-time renter. So chances are that they may have very little credit or no credit at all. Maybe all they have is at 18 years old is a cell phone. Maybe they don't have that. Maybe their parents are paying for their cell phone. This is where you must rely on the cosigner. The cosigner also has to have good credit, usually at least 650 or higher in the US and Canada. Now, in Canada, if you're a Canadian listener, In Canada, there is a credit number for personal credit, but there's also a grade rating. It's usually A to F, like a report card grading. Either way, you've got to get credit from one or both. If they're a first-time renter, you understand it, but you've got to look at the whole picture. Then you zoom out. You look at everything. You look at the entire scenario. How quick did they respond to your requests? Did they give you everything that you asked for? Maybe they tried to sneak a fake pay stub by you, which has happened to me. No, that's an automatic deal breaker, by the way, if they do that for me. Will they be working most of the time? Do they have just one car? This is where you have to look at the entire situation and make sure that this unit will work for them and that you will be able to work with these folks based on the information. At this point, you'll have been working with them for probably several days, maybe even a couple of weeks. And if you're moving fast, this could all be done in a matter of hours. But remember, potential tenants are always on their best behavior when you're screening them. They're always on their best behavior before you rent to them. So you've got to have done your homework. You can't just say, oh, they look nice, or they've seemed put together, or they're very courteous. That's fine, but you have to do the work behind it. You must. This is not a passive investment, folks. This is a active investment. You must do the hard work behind it. Okay, there's lecture over. Let me keep going. Let's say you decide to move forward with them, that this is going to work, but this is where you create the lease in the exact same way that you would with any tenant, first time with a cosigner or not. You would create the lease at the same way, but you would put the tenant and the cosigner, and you would mark the cosigner as a cosigner, as a guarantor, not an occupant. This cosigner isn't going to live there. They're just going to be financially responsible. So on my lease addendum, let me try it again. In my lease addendum, I also make a specific list of the occupants permitted in that unit. And in this case, only the first-time tenant would be on that list. Especially, just as an aside, if we have a tenant who's got any pets or children, the pets and the children would also be listed as approved occupants for that unit. That way, if somebody sneaks somebody in and they start living there, guess what? That is a lease violation. That's how I do it. I put it in the lease addendum. Okay. So we've gone through qualifying or pre-qualifying, showing, and then qualifying all the way up to lease. And we can talk more about move-in later. There's all kinds of content about move-in inspections. And I bet based on this conversation that you've got questions like, what happens if they have a deal breaker? What words do you say? What happens if they don't have high enough credit? What do you tell them? What do I do if there is another applicant more qualified than them while they're getting their stuff sent to me? What happens if the first-time cosigner misbehaves or doesn't pay? How do I involve the cosigner? All good questions coming up in future episodes. So sorry, this is exactly what we're going to do. Don't worry, this is not the end of the shows on tenant screening. In fact, this is one of the most requested topics, so I'm going to do many more shows on tenant screening and try to get as much help as I can from special guests and experts in the industry, which is super cool. Okay, so here's some homework for you. If you are a newbie landlord, if you're doing this just for one of the very first times, or you only have 1 or 2 rentals, you need to do some homework for yourself. Figure out how to check court history, criminal history in the area where your rentals are. You've got to figure that out. Even if you just say Google your local area where the rentals are. So if your rentals are in Houston, criminal check, or criminal court check, or court record check. Any of those search terms will start pulling up ways that you can search for court records or criminal history or civil history in those jurisdictions. You may have to pay for some of these, so stand by to do that. If you need more help in your tenant qualifications, especially as a newbie landlord, remember, I have a newbie bingo card at mylifeasalandlord.com that will guide your education and get you going. That is the fastest way to help you educate yourself, is to get that bingo card and keep going. Okay, but let's say you're not a newbie landlord. Let's say you're listening to this and you're a seasoned landlord. You're waiting for me to say something brilliant, and that is going to just dazzle you. So I challenge you. I'm sure I said something dazzling in this episode. I challenge you to update your application and your qualification process based on what you heard today. So I challenge you, if you are a seasoned landlord, to do that. If you enjoyed today's show, where I discussed all about first-time renters, qualifications, and co-signers, the biggest compliment you can give me is by leaving a review so that people, other listeners like you, people who need my podcast can find me. If you've got a question that you would like me to answer on the podcast, give me a holler. A holler can be found on my website, mylifeasalandlord.com. Now, holler is a new thing. It's something you pay for, and then I answer your questions or concerns on the podcast, which is why it's called a holler. It's kind of cool. Check it out. Join me next week for episode 73 for an amazing guest who's got an innovative solution to help tenants become first-time homeowners. Frank Rode from Ownify is joining us next week to tell us all about it. I'll see you there.